This is just a reminder, you will get through it. Keep the faith. Everything will be okay. Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Tori, and I am a first-time mom. Today, I thought I would share with you my labor and delivery story. So I feel like there's someone out there that can relate, or if you are pregnant and getting ready to have a baby, maybe you will find this video a little useful. But go ahead and grab yourself a drink and a cozy blanket. I have my cup of coffee, and let's get into this video. So to start off and give a little context, I do have high blood pressure. And in pregnancy, high blood pressure is a pretty big concern just because you are at a higher risk of developing pre-eclampsia. So my entire pregnancy, I was on blood pressure medication that is safe for pregnancy. So although my blood pressure was stable throughout my pregnancy, my doctor didn't risk me developing pre-eclampsia and having to have an emergency C-section. So she went ahead and scheduled my induction for 38 weeks and 1 day. So with an induction, women that go into labor naturally are given priority over rooms. And then if you have an induction, they'll call you in whenever they do have availability. So for me, my induction date was May the 30th. So if you're not in the US, May 29th is Memorial Day. It is a holiday. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, if my induction date is May the 30th, then there's absolutely no way that they're gonna call me in to be induced. I didn't think that it would happen. But my doctor did warn me. She said, you know, sometimes you can get called in before your induction date, and sometimes it can be after. It all depends on your hospital's availability. So again, in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, it's a holiday weekend. There's no way they're gonna call me in. Memorial Day comes along and I could not sleep. Like the closer I got to my induction date, the more nervous that I became. I think that's like one downside of having an induction date. For me, I get anxiety, and so the closer I got to the day, like the more anxiety, it was bad. Memorial Day, I remember I woke up at like 6 in the morning and I was just like pacing around the house, just trying to find stuff to do to keep my mind busy, because I knew the next day was, you know, the day to go to the hospital. And I was just so nervous about having an induction. Like I hadn't heard, I won't say I hadn't heard, but I heard mixed reviews on some women's induction experiences. And so I just didn't know what to expect. So I was so nervous about that. And so my husband, he ended up calling some family over. We ended up grilling out. Poor thing, he was trying to keep me occupied, trying to keep my mind off of my induction being scheduled for the next day. It's the night of Memorial Day. And like I said, I had been up since 6 in the morning and I was pretty beat. I was pretty tired. So I got in the bed and I put on Netflix. And as soon as the Netflix video played, the hospital calls and they're like, hey, are you ready to come in? And I was like, hey, what do you mean? It was just like, this is not supposed to happen. Like, it's a holiday. Aren't y'all busy? Like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And so she was like, I mean, like, do you want to come in? And I was like, yeah, we can come. Yeah, now's a good time, I guess. And I'm just trying to, like, you know, have some courage. But she was like, so how long do you think it's gonna take for you to get here? And I was just like, I mean, probably 10 minutes. And she's like, great, see you in 10 minutes. And I was like, okay. Like, in a way, I was kind of relieved because at least I didn't have to go like the whole entire night thinking about it. And then the next morning, just walking around with my phone in my hand, waiting for the hospital to call. And so I remember just getting my husband and like, it's time to go. And he was like, but today's not the day. And I was like, today is the day though. And so we got in the car, and I'll tell you, like that drive to the hospital, I don't know how it is with your second or your third or whatever, but with your first, I mean, I won't forget it. I just remember just praying the whole entire car ride just because I was nervous. Like, having a baby is such a major life event, and so is going through labor. I just didn't know what to expect. So we finally get to the hospital and they check me in. And if you've never had a baby before, when you go into labor, or if you are in labor, they make you sign a bunch of paperwork. I guess basically, honestly, it covers a lot of different things. Like if you need a blood transfusion, if you're unable to make a decision for yourself, who's gonna make decisions for you, that kind of thing. I signed my paperwork. They went ahead and started an IV, and they went over my doctor's birth plan. So my doctor did not want me to immediately start on Pitocin. I believe it may have something to do with my blood pressure, but Pitocin was to be the very last option for my labor or for my induction. So instead, they gave me, is it called Cytotec? Hold on, I wrote it down. Yeah, Cytotec. And Cytotec is an oral medication. There are 6 doses that you have to take every 3 hours. And my nurse said that a lot of women don't make it to the 6th dose. But there are 6 doses in case you need it. Starting off my induction, I had not dilated at all. Even though in my 3rd trimester, I had a lot of Braxton Hicks, and I ate a lot of pineapple. I did the red raspberry leaf tea, all of those things. I had not dilated at all. So you can hear my baby in the background. So I was starting all the way at the bottom. So we started the Cytotec, and I remember it took about an hour for me to even feel anything. And once I did start feeling something, it felt like period cramps. And I would have like these period-like contractions for about an hour, and then they would go away. And this went on through all of the doses. Then we finally get to the 6th dose, and the doctor checks me, and I've barely even dilated. It didn't work for me. And I remember just feeling so defeated because by the time I finished the Cytotec, it had already been 18 hours. Now, mind you, with each dose of the Cytotec, I feel like my contractions did get worse, but like I said, they would just fade away. And so again, once I got to the 6th dose and they said, okay, that it's still not. So after 6 doses and 18 hours on the Cytotec, it didn't work for me. I barely progressed. And so my doctor wanted to move on to the next induction technique, which was the balloon. Okay, so my princess decided to join us. So as I was saying, since the side attack didn't work, the next step was to have the balloon inserted. Uh, the balloon is inserted vaginally, and so I would say that it did hurt. Um, it was just a little bit of pressure, but once the balloon was in, you couldn't feel it. Um, and I believe I had the balloon in for about another 5 or 6 hours. The balloon did work, I will say that. um, so as I had the balloon in, when they first inserted it, my contractions picked up a lot. Um, and I remember I wasn't able to leave my bed because my monitor wasn't wireless. So they did have a wireless one in the room, but it didn't work. Lucky me. So I was stuck to my bed and I could only, kind of like stand beside the bed, which didn't do anything. But I wanted to walk around so bad because in my mind, I thought that it would help my labor to progress. But unfortunately, my monitor wasn't wireless. As I was laying in bed, I remember my contractions really picking up, and I felt like a lot of fluid down there. I didn't think that my water had broke, but I felt a lot of fluid, and of course, when I looked down, I saw a little bit of blood on like the little pad that's on the bed. And so I remember my husband getting the nurse and was like, she's bleeding. Is this normal? And so it turns out like there was a lot of blood. There was a lot more blood than I thought. And so she went and got the doctor, and it was time to pull the balloon out. She said that once she pulled the balloon out, I could finally take a shower if I wanted to, and it would be the last time that I would be able to eat before starting the Pitocin. But I remember at that point, my contractions were so bad, I hadn't been hungry. I was more tired than anything, which I hadn't slept since Sunday night into Monday morning. But I would be able to eat something and take a shower. And so I remember I took a shower, and as I was in the shower, the contractions just kept picking up. Like I was holding on to the rail. I was doing everything I could to push through the contractions. My doctor, well, the nurses rather, had offered me an epidural, but I wanted to try to go as far into labor as possible for several reasons. Like I was scared of having an epidural, just the thought of having a needle in my back and everything that could go wrong kind of worried me. And then also, I didn't want my epidural to slow down my labor. So I wanted to try to go as long as possible without having one. So I just remember just laboring in the shower for a while, and then I laid back in the bed and labored there. So then it was time for the Pitocin, the dreaded Pitocin. I can tell you I hadn't heard good things about Pitocin. So I wasn't looking forward to it. I had really hoped that I wouldn't have to have the Pitocin. But again, labor is so unpredictable. You just kind of have to go with the flow. And so they gave me the Pitocin, and it took my contractions to another level. The best way that I can describe a contraction is like being on a roller coaster and you feel like you have the worst period cramp and the worst like gas cramp ever, like combined. You can feel the contractions when they're coming on, and then you can feel them like go down. It's like a wave almost. And they just get worse and worse, and they get closer and closer together. And that Pitocin, it was just, for me, it wasn't pleasant. But it did dilate me. I remember being so tired that I would fall asleep in between contractions, which, by the way, my contractions were pretty close together. So I would like take a 30-second to a minute long nap and then wake back up and then fall asleep again. So after being on the Pitocin for a few hours, I remember getting like this really like nauseated feeling. I felt like I had to throw up. And I had one contraction that was so bad, it took me over the edge. That's when I started throwing up. And that's when I called the nurse and I was like, I need that epidural, like ASAP. And she was like, got you. I love my nurse. My nurse's name was Bray. I loved all of my nurses, to be clear, but Bray and I don't know, I feel like we just had this connection. By the way, the nurses, they can see your contractions from the nurses station. And so she was like, I mean, I was wondering when you were gonna ask for one. And I was like, I can't take it anymore. And so by that point, I was 6 centimeters dilated. And I remember she called the anesthesiologist. And at that point, any anxiety that I had about getting an epidural had gone out the window. I was just like, I will take anything right now to not feel another contraction. It was not. It was not great. It was not. And so when I say that my anesthesiologist was there in 10 minutes, before I even had a chance to process that I was getting an epidural, he was already there, and that man was not playing any games. Like, he came in, he introduced himself, and he went to work. He pulled me back, and he did what he had to do. I will say that I had watched videos on epidurals and stuff like that prior to getting induced, so I kind of knew what to expect, because I knew I didn't want them to tell me what they were doing as they were doing it. I don't want to know anything, just do it. And so he didn't say anything to me. He just he went to work. I will say the epidural did not hurt. For me, it did not hurt. I felt a small pinch in my back, and then I felt like something cold going down, something cold and wet going down my back. But I'll say this, everything that he did, I could feel it, but none of it hurt. You can feel the tube going down your spine. And like I said, you can feel like him putting the actual thing in your back, but I don't know, maybe it's just my contractions were so bad that the pinch of a needle going in your back doesn't hurt. But I had nothing to worry about. If you're worried about getting an epidural, I would say, for me, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be at all. And I immediately felt my epidural. I know they say it takes about 30 minutes to an hour for it to kick in. I don't remember I don't remember waiting that long, because I remember right after he finished, I had a really bad contraction. Because like I said, you can see the contractions on the screen. And my nurse asked, "Can you feel that? Could you feel that? That was really bad." I was like, "I can't feel anything. I feel great." Like, that was the best I had felt in a very, very long time. um, and so my anesthesiologist, he's the man. He did it with that epidural. And so after I had the epidural, I was finally able to go to sleep. When I say I slept, that was the best sleep I had had in a while. I felt so good, and like, you know, they give you a little button so that if you need more, I guess, of the epidural, you can get some. They don't have to reinsert the needle or anything like that. It's just a little button that you press, and it administers more. And so I remember taking a nap. So while I took a nap, I was woken up by my nurse, Bray, who said that my blood pressure had gone up significantly. She said that typically when you get an epidural, your blood pressure goes down, especially after having a nap. However, mine went up by a lot. She said that they would have to give me magnesium. And so they had to give me another IV. I believe it was in my opposite arm. So I had Pitocin in one arm, and I had the magnesium in another arm, if I remember correctly. And she said that she had to give the magnesium to prevent me from having a seizure. And that with the magnesium, I could start to feel poorly. But just to let her know. And so since I had the epidural, I was just like, okay, is the baby in danger? Am I in danger? Everything's okay. I mean, just give me the magnesium. I you know, do what you have to do. And so they give me the magnesium, and luckily I didn't have any side effects. I mean, I didn't feel anything. And so I ended up going back to sleep. I went back to sleep, and I remember waking up, and I told my husband, I have to poop really, really bad. And so I was like, I'm too scared to poop. Like, I don't know, this might be the baby. You know, let's get the nurse just in case. And so my nurse comes in, and she was like, okay, let me go get the doctor. I think it's time to start pushing. And so the doctor comes in and gives me the okay to start pushing. And I pushed baby girl out in 15 minutes, about 5 pushes in 15 minutes. So because I had the magnesium, I had to stay in the hospital for a little bit longer than normal, just because they have to monitor you. I was sent to the high risk unit for monitoring, and I stayed there for about 3 more days. My blood pressure would not come back down. The magnesium did help it to come down, but my blood pressure was still too high for me to go home. And so the doctors had to kind of come up with a concoction of medicines to stabilize it. Finally able to go home that Saturday. On the day that I was discharged, I was given instruction on what my blood pressure levels should be, and that if it was any higher than that, to go to the emergency room. So the following day after I was discharged, I remember feeling really, really sick. My head hurt so bad. I would see like little black spots, like, you know how like if you are just looking straight at something, how you can see like little black spots in your vision. I remember seeing black spots, feeling like a little dizzy, feeling like I needed to throw up. And so I remember telling my husband, like, I need to lay down. And so my husband, being the good husband that he is, he was like, I think we need to check your blood pressure. And so I remember putting my feet up on the couch and kind of like laying back because I hadn't rested. That first night home from the hospital for us was tough. Like, I'm sure we're not the only one. I'm sure there's some women and some families where their first night it was a breeze, but for us, it was rough. Neither one of us got any sleep. And so I remember just kind of like propping my feet up on the couch and trying my best to rest. And he took my blood pressure and it was extremely high to the point where like we had to go to the emergency room. And so we went right back to the emergency room at the hospital that I delivered at. And then they sent us to labor and delivery, who then sent me back to the high risk unit where I was readmitted. That's right. I was readmitted after I had been discharged. Not even 24 hours later. Like, I remember just being so scared, and not necessarily scared for me, but scared for my daughter, scared for my husband. Because pre-eclampsia, it can be deadly, you know, and even if it wasn't deadly, if I were to have a stroke, you know, how would I be able to take care of my newborn after having a stroke, you know? Just the worst things that just came to mind. But luckily, my doctor was on call that day, and so she was able to see me, and she gave me some medicine, and my blood pressure was able to go back down immediately once she gave it to me. We're good now. Blood pressure is great. Baby girl is great. I would say don't be scared. I mean, and that's easier said than done, just because I guess I've been through it and everybody's birth story is different. But I remember just being so nervous, and there was really nothing to be nervous about. Everything ran so smoothly. Although things didn't go the way that I wanted for them to go, everything was still okay. If you made it all the way through this video, comment a baby emoji to let me know that you finished the video. Thank you guys for watching, and please subscribe for more videos. I plan on making like some cleaning videos and just more mommy, possibly mommy and baby related videos, but somewhere in that area. So subscribe for more videos. Comment if you would, also comment if you'd like to hear about my pregnancy symptoms. My pregnancy symptoms were not like the pregnancy symptoms. Of course they weren't. My pregnancy symptoms were not like the pregnancy symptoms that you see on YouTube or the internet. So if you're curious as to what my pregnancy symptoms were, comment that down below as well. That concludes today's video. Thank you all for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.